Not that clock.
Not by that clock, but Apple says it's 10 o'clock. It's November the 14th. Let's call this meeting to order. I'm Bob Seaver.
Chris Olson.
Joe Shirley.
And I guess, should we go around the table and introduce ourselves?
Sure, we'll start here.
Please.
Hey, my name's Jeff Mills with Merit Advisors.
Ken.
Drew Rogers with Merit Advisors. Nathan Cahill, Merit Advisors.
Welcome.
Luke Adams, Tisdale, O'Hara.
Renetta Benson, Woods County Assessor.
Morning, everybody.
Jerry Wisdom, Total Assessment Solutions.
Good morning. We have a quorum. Okay, who wants to start first?
I think and I don't know if this is a formality or not, but since we had closed it, I thought maybe we better open it back up, the equalization.
Okay.
New reopen.
Okay,
Second.
Okay.
all right, there it
All in
is.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And we have to have the acknowledgements, I do have them, and on everyone, so thank you very much. Now we can start.
Okay. We'll need discussion, possible action regarding the reopening of people. Okay, who begins?
Usually we will. That's
Okay, absolutely.
passes around. Do the signature. All right. So it gets. Okay. Is Sanford's exploration, and this is a taxability issue on saltwater disposal system. And we're just going to walk through a brief history. Right on the second page there. It's a saltwater disposal system. This is a non-commercial disposal system, therefore non-taxable. Saltwater disposal system and many other related equipment associated with the production of oil and gas are exempt from ad valorem taxation for OAC 710-10A-2. The saltwater here is multiple leases, but it's the same operator, so therefore it's still non-commercial, therefore non-taxable. And we'll kind of walk through some of this here. On the third page, we'll say 39 in the middle, but it's the third page of this packet. You'll see number 10 there. This is all exempt equipment if you're paying for gross production, if you're paying the gross production tax. All this is fee in lieu, so the disposal systems are part of this under number 10. You'll see that for not for commercial purposes. All of our commercial wells, all of our saltwater disposal systems are non-commercial. And right now, I'm not sure on how other operators are, but from my understanding, we have people at this table that have worked at other companies here that have saltwater disposal systems that are non-commercial. They're not on the tax rolls either. We want to make sure that we're treated fairly and equally like other taxpayers and get these saltwater disposal systems off the roll. And then what we get to is this Cumberland operating case versus OGs. This is basically a case that many assessors are looking at to tax various percentages of saltwater systems. You basically had two leases and one saltwater disposal well, and what they came up with in the courts here is it said that if you had any other saltwater coming from a separate lease, that it was considered taxable if it went across lease, like a lease line into a saltwater disposal system. Problem with that is those are two different operators. So you had commercial water being pumped down a non-commercial well. So that portion of it becomes taxable. So that's what we're looking at here with this case, and you can't look at our saltwater disposal system the same way because we're the same operator on all these leases. So we're going across lease lines, various leases, but it's the same operator. So none of this is commercial. It's all non-commercial. We go down the hole with it and dispose of it as we're supposed to, as we're required. You'll see here on page, we'll go page 7 and 8 into the highlighted area. We can go through more in this case. I know Jerry's going to talk about it. So, but it just says, at first glance, it would seem then that the matter is not whether the saltwater disposed of in the Allen number 1 came from the lease on which the Allen number 1 stands, or whether the saltwater comes from the adjoining Douglas lease. The trial court found a difference between the disposal saltwater produced by one's own lease and the commercial disposal for compensation of saltwater. So this entire case was based off of, again, you've got producing wells on 2 different leases, and on number 2 over here, they need to get rid of their salt water. So they pump down the saltwater disposal wells on this other lease. But again, they were paying to have that service done, so therefore that portion is taxable because they didn't have their own disposal well. So they pumped it down a different operator's disposal system, so that portion would be taxable. However, we are the operator in all of these leases, so whether if all of our wells are on 1 lease or 5 leases, we still are required to get rid of that salt water. So, and again, there's operators and other operators here in this county and other counties don't have, these assets aren't taxable. You know, it's the same sort of setup that we have, but for whatever reason, we're continuing to be taxed on these. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to. Yeah, so that's all we have at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You quoted, you're the operator on all the wells, right?
Correct.
Are you the 100% owner of the operations on those wells, or do you have non-operator interest?
Sorry.
We're the operator. Yeah, this is
You have non-operating people in your lease? that are
Yeah,
not-
every oil and gas company does, yes.
Okay, now you're charging those people, right?
We charge them, yeah, just like we charge the gross production tax back to them too. Yeah, we jib everything out. They get the revenue and they get the expenses, just like every other operator. This is at an operator level, not a working interest holder. So we don't, if you'll look through that, you know, we'd like to talk about that as far as various interest holders. This court case says nothing about working interest holders. It says the operator.
Okay, you're just talking about the operator.
Whoever operates. Just the operator.
Chesapeake, Sandridge.
Right, because Chesapeake's made up of multiple working interest holders, just like Sandridge is. That's the way it is with it. That's why they do it at the operator level.
Clear that.
Yes, sir.
Before we go.
Jerry, I guess we're ready for you.
Sure,
You're
we'll pass out
you ready?
one more page here. I got an extra one there too, Drew. First of all, they made a statement of why issues being taxable is these historically have been reported in the assessor's office since 2011, 2010 by Sandridge. This is the 2016 list just on this page right here, and it shows how much water from the different, it says produced on spacing unit, which is a different location, and how much was disposed of at that well. So you see the taxable percentage is highlighted down that. So like this first one, 6% of the water was produced from that same lease on there. So 94% of that well was taxable. If you go down to one was 88%, one was 66%, one well was shut in, so it was 0% of taking other people's water. So historically, that was the percentage, and if you look at Jeff's listing here, it talked about in this particular case here, 9% of the Douglas lease was. So I want to point out right now, number one, he says because this Cumberland case, he's supposing that it was 2 different operators for that case. Turn to my exhibit 35. I'm going to shorten this thing up. So these are the wells that Cumberland had in Lincoln County, and you can see the Allen number 1 was the saltwater disposal well, which is the subject of this case, and the CM Douglas is the other well, that's the other lease. It's the same operator. So his theory that because the Cumberland case was 2 different operators is moot. It's not. It's the same operator in this case. And it's the same operator for here. It's just like Chris, you alluded to, we had 2 different working interest owners in there, and they're charging a fee. And they were charging a fee to get rid of the water from the Douglas well into the Allen well. So this case right here is not 2 separate operators. It's the same operator. Cumberland operated both, and it's no different from Sandridge. So we would ask that, we asked, earlier in some emails to get the allocation of the salt water. We haven't received that for this year. So our valuation starts on page, it's hard to read, page 36. So if you turn to page 36, next page over, you can see the adjustment factor highlighted. What the assessor has done historically for the last 2 years, because remember, when Sandridge was reporting this, they reported information only whenever Merritt took over as their tax agent, where it became in this deal, this is all exempt, and it's not part of production. So this is clearly on Merritt Advisor's advisement to do so, not Sandridge's. Now, Sandridge is still taking the torch, if you will. We had the same issue last year that we brought up the information on. The board went with us. Sandridge did not sue last year here, but they did sue in Grant County. So in Grant County, we have a case pending that Luke with Tisdale Health represents as well. So what we would ask to do is we would ask the board to affirm our values on here, and the values are starting on summary pages, pages 60 through 62. I've highlighted by school district. We would just ask the board to affirm our valuations, because what he just said, that these were separate operators, weren't separate operators, so that kind of blew his whole case there. And the fact that you have different working interest owners, the same working interest owners do not own these saltwater disposal wells that are the wells that are producing into them. So they're charging a fee back to these other ones. So we just ask the board to affirm the exercise.
How do you respond to his?
May I, Madam?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Two points as far as the case goes. If he misspoke about two separate operators, that is an inconsequential fact in the setup. It is not in the determination. The determination was two separate operators for a commercial well. One operator operating across two different leases is a non-commercial well. Misspoke it, apologize for that, but that doesn't change the determination of the case. Second thing, here, I worked for Sandridge for 8 years. This saltwater disposal system is one massive system that crosses multiple counties, 2 states. So water produced on a unit may not necessarily go to that saltwater disposal well. It may go to the next lease over. That's just a matter of how things are flowing. So this percentage is just not, it's not reasonable.
The percentage was given by Sandridge, so I mean, if they're not reasonable, it's not reasonable because we requested the percentages for Sandridge to acquire for us. So it's still 2 separate leases. And if it's 2 separate leases, you can the only one that's exempt is the one that's on the same lease that is. Like this BB saltwater 223, any other water that comes from the section 23, 2713 and disposed of there is exempt because that's the lease. If you take something from 16 or 28, again, and we asked for maps of these pipeline systems to show where all the pipelines, and also inside these valuations, when we get to it, let's see here. There's actually pipelines that's involved in this as well that leave the leases. So it's not all, it's not all exempt. So they've got pipelines that are piping the water through right-of-ways, across sections, across county, if it's going across county boundaries. But each one of these systems, I don't know, and I guess I could ask him, you're saying that all these are integrated as one and they all connect to each other and you can move it where you want to?
Absolutely. That was the whole purpose.
Okay, so the percentages then is just done on an allocation base that James gave to the assessor then based upon, and you know how much water comes from what lease and how much water goes to a certain lease?
I don't know that for a fact. I do not know that for a fact.
So, but it's all measured of how much production water is
Comes out of a well, I know that.
Okay,
Where it
so
goes from
then-
there, I don't know.
Okay, so that's merely, the allocation portion is something different, but as far as the valuation standpoint goes on, it's still a commercial. They're charging so much per barrel to dispose of the water from the other lease.
But it's non-commercial.
I know it's non-commercial, but the Cumberland was non-commercial. But when they took water from another lease, that made it commercial.
So
So we're
logically
still
thinking-
holding, just a- we're still holding the Cumberland case that set precedent in the Supreme Court ruling, and that's where our stance is. And your stance is.
But why is it just us, Jerry? Why is it just our company?
This is the company that's been reported. If you'll be more happy, if you guys have got other information about other saltwater disposal wells, you said that they represented, if there's some other omitted property out there, please let us know, and then we'll do that as well. Do you guys represent these other companies that have these wells?
It's widely known, Jerry. It's
So
widely.
you have
We'll talk about
information
this.
about property that's not
We're
being
gonna talk about
reported?
this case right now, so.
But no, you
This
brought
was-
up the issue about those other properties. If there's other properties that's out there that's not being taxed, please let the assessor know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do that afterwards. Because,
Okay.
we're not taxed in how many counties now? We're down to 2. We just got 1 reversed this year. We're down to 2 now. We got 1 reversed in 17 in Woodward, not Alfalfa anymore, not Harper anymore. So yeah, this isn't a merit thing. This is widely known that these are non-commercial wells. And if we're taking in our own water, let's logically think about it. If we're taking in our own water, why would it matter if it's from another lease or not? It's our own water and we're disposing of it. So a portion of it becomes taxable even though it's our own water. I still hold on to this court case because regardless of how it is on that other lease, this says right here, one's own lease and the commercial disposal. Ours is not commercial, ours is non-commercial, and we are taking in our own water. So how does it become commercial by taking in your own water?
The Allen number 1 was not a commercial, it wasn't classified as a commercial water. It wasn't. What it did is whenever it took water, it became commercial. Just like in some of your wells, you guys were taking on third-party water out here, right?
Years ago, yeah.
So,
Back
but I
in
mean,
15 years ago.
last year, I mean, you had third-party water, you had volumes last year on your rendition.
Third party, nobody did that.
It certainly said it. If you look back and look, it said third-party, yes, I think there was 2 of them. So you're taking.
I don't think it was this county, I think it was Grant. Anyway, Scott.
But anyway, they're talking about by another's lease right here, so that's what the point is. You got one lease here, any water that's from that lease is covered.
But the whole
And
word
the only
another's
reason
lease
that
means
we're
it's
talking
not
about
us.
it is the Supreme Court rules. And as far as the county assessor Woods, she doesn't know what the other county assessor does, and it's not really relevant what the other counties do. It's only relevant for Woods County.
You are suggesting that Cumberland is being treated differently
Well,
in this county?
without knowing all of the details on this, because I still contend that there's multiple wells here, and I still have to look at this to make sure that this is accurately the same wells. I haven't had time to look at this, but when, in the wording, it's odd that they don't say the same operator, they're not specific here where they don't say a different operator, they don't say the same operator. But when they say, I mean, it's just weird that they would use these words, saltwater produced by one's own lease and the commercial disposal for compensation. So that means they're getting paid. By whom? Themselves?
They're getting paid from the other lease, just like you guys are.
Those are intercompany, you're just jibbing that, that's all internal,
You're
it's not
charging-
compensation.
Yes, it is.
No, it's
You're
not.
charging the other working interest owners another well.
You don't charge other work, it's an expense item that's jibbed out.
But it's income for that traditional saltwater disposal well.
It's not income, it is not income.
Oh, it's not?
It is not.
Let me interject a question here.
Please.
When you're saying non-commercial, now, what is, in your opinion, what does that mean?
Non-commercial means that you do not take in third-party water for compensation.
Now, when you say third party, are you saying operators, or are you saying
Operators.
non-operators
No.
that are a part of that other particular lease?
In my experience, I've never known a non-operator to go out and get third-party water. It's operator, it's always at an operator level, they're the ones that handle everything. So I mean, we have lots of
Yeah.
non-op interests, and you don't have those kind of, you're not operating the well.
Now, the question is, who pays for the expense of the pipeline and the disposal well? Who pays
Same
for that?
people that get the revenue.
I
Everybody.
thought there wasn't any revenue.
No, there's no income
There's no
internal. That's
Now,
complete, let's not.
You have an oil and gas lease
Mhm.
that says basically those people who own the mineral rights
Mhm.
will get so much percentage of the wellhead price. Doesn't say anything about disposal.
Right, but it's part of it.
No.
Are you talking about a royalty interest or a
Yeah, which
working
one is
interest?
not working?
Because the working interest
I'm talking
agreements,
about working interest.
Okay.
those
Does the
specify
working
you.
interest party in those particular wells pay for the pipeline and the disposal well that has been drilled perhaps in another area, another section.
Well, I'm not sure on the building portion of it, but any of the expense get jumped out to the workers.
The gross production is gathered from the wellhead
Right.
production. It had nothing to do with the disposal of the water. Now, my question is, who pays for that pipeline? You're saying the operator does, but does the operator then reimburse the non-operator of his leasehold interest? Does he reimburse them for the profit he makes off of transporting and disposing this way?
I'm confused as to what we're talking about on disposal and transport.
If you trucked it out, you're going to be charged as a working interest owner. You're going to be charged a rate.
But the
for-
trucking company makes the profit,
That's the
not
difference here,
not
is
the
this-
pipeline.
we don't have this because these are all pipelines.
But in order to lower the
system.
expense, that's why the system was built.
Right.
Instead of charging $2 a barrel or something ridiculous,
Right, it's closed loop.
6 cents, 4 cents, something, I mean, it was intended to lower the expense for everybody.
Does the pipeline expense, so if you go 5 miles to a disposal well,
Mhm.
and the 5th mile over here, does that non-operating people, working interest people, do they pay for that 5 mile of pipe in the disposal? Do they pay for that? No, they don't.
I don't.
They don't.
Yeah, they don't
So
pay for
that pipeline and the disposal becomes a profit-making entity to whoever financed the production of it.
The operator?
Yeah.
It's not a separate
And now the
entity.
operator and the non-operator in those leases are different people. You understand what I'm saying?
But they're not a separate legal entity.
Oh, yes, they are.
No, the operator is the same.
Now, the operator's the same, but the non-operating people in that particular well
Yeah,
is
that
not.
changes throughout but that's with that's every
Okay,
lease.
that, they get stuck with the bill that the operator charges
And they'll get stuck
for
with
owning the
revenue.
pipeline and the disposal.
Right,
Okay.
you net out.
You-
this
You
revenue.
you answered my question right there.
We would ask that you affirm this exercise.
Would you outline on this map where your disposals are and what sections they involve?
You want me to draw them all out right now?
Yeah. Can you do that?
Ridiculous now.
You can't do that?
You want me to draw out 34 wells or whatever we're at right now and all the systems?
What about a map, and can you supply a map with all the
No,
pipelines?
this is a taxability issue, so we'll just go there. So that's
No, if we want to go inspect this, how are we going to do that with not having the information here?
You sound like the working interest holder.
I am.
I figured as much. That's all I needed to hear.
I think Sanders has always been very accommodating for the county to come out.
I'm sorry.
I've
What
been
does
on
that mean,
tours
what
with
you
the
just
county.
said? All you need to
Usually-
hear.
You
All
that's
due
fine.
respect, I don't
I
know.
remember this from last year. Usually whenever you have a vested interest, we talk about having somebody maybe recuse themselves because they have a vested interest in this case. So that's,
Everybody that owns a royalty interest has got an invested interest here. That would
yeah,
include.
but you said you have working interest.
I do have, and
That's
most
different than
people do
royalty.
have working interest.
That's different than what
My question to you is, outline it so we can go take a look and see whether
What does
you're.
that have to do with taxability? It's a taxable system or it's not.
Yeah, but who owns that pipeline? And who gets the revenue from that pipeline and the disposal well?
And
You get a percentage of it.
which water is coming from what well? From what I understand, the way I always understand it, I didn't understand is that these are all interconnected. Every one of these systems,
I can't say every one of them. I mean,
Well,
at
that's
some
what you
point, it
said a while
doesn't.
ago.
Well,
that's
they're
what
not
I was
trucked
saying.
in. They're not
They're
trucked
not
in.
trucked in.
I'm just saying that you not have 5 or 6 wells going to one and 5 or 6 wells going
Right.
to the
But in
other.
this case, they're trucked in. They're not trucked in today.
I don't understand in that case they're trucked in. What does that
Well,
mean?
in other words, they're taking water, so they're trucking it over here. Today, everything's, this is 1980 something. We don't dumb drill down straight anymore. I mean, we have technology now. Everything's different. So this is kind of
How's it
outdated.
different from taking from one lease to another lease?
Well, when you're trucking it in, there's additional costs that
You
gets
talking about
added.
trucking it in or piping it in?
There's multiple ways.
We're talking about pipelines. What I'm saying is, which wells service the list of the pipeline? Can you supply that information?
This is a taxability issue.
But how are we gonna know if it's a taxability issue? If it's on the same lease, then then it's okay. Are you gonna concede that it's on separate leases?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there are multiple leases, as in every other oil and gas operator. For whatever reason we're doing, that's fine.
Here's my concern, it is not with Sandridge that I have a working knowledge here, it is with another company. They drilled a saltwater disposal 5 miles away. And then, before they ever drilled the wells in the adjoining sections, they lay a pipeline and get it all hooked up so that they can dispose their water. That pipeline was paid for by the company that went bankrupt. Okay? The people that had a working interest in the wells 5 miles away did not have a part of paying for that bankrupt pipeline that went in. Now, here we got a bankrupt pipeline sitting there, and they're wanting to sell it. Okay? Somebody's going to make a profit, but it's not going to be that non-working interest operator in section 5. He's not going to get a part of it. Although you're trying to tell me that, well, that ought to be exempt from gross production or from the tax.
Right. Just like you didn't share in any of the expenses to build out the entire infrastructure, did you?
Yeah, but that gross production stops at the lease line.
I think that becomes commercial when that sale happens, if they service the wells in that section.
So now you're taxing the owner and not the property?
And I didn't say that. What I said was the commercial well, the saltwater well that was drilled by the operator, the pipe was laid to section 5, would be non-commercial at that point, if they're all operated wells. Our position, right? It's bankrupt, and you sell it to a third party who's going to service those wells in section 5. That's commercial.
They're gonna
They're
charge
not
a
the
fee.
operator anymore.
They're gonna charge a fee for.
I don't know that. I know that they're not the operator anymore.
Right.
My assumption is,
Right,
and
it's a third
therefore,
party.
Right.
it's a third-party commercial
But that
well.
is a true
But
third
they're,
party.
but they're still charging a fee. They're gonna charge a fee just like Sandridge is charging a fee.
I
So
anticipate
they're
any.
operators.
Yeah.
So it's
But
a
I would
different
guess it's a
income
much
source.
larger fee.
So it's a different income source. What is the fee? I think it was 56 cents a barrel or something last year, you were saying that they charged per, well, you had some sort of.
For those two in Grant County, yeah, they charged out for those two when they took third-party water in, yeah. Something like that. I don't remember what they charged.
Third-party
50 cents a
rate,
barrel.
yeah.
But yeah, we don't charge internal. I mean, again, you jib it out like you do with any other expense. It's all part of it. You can't just segregate one piece of it. It's all of it or nothing. You take the revenue, you take your expenses, you net them out, and that's what you get. I mean, we're gonna start dissecting. It's scary.
No, that's exactly what we have to do.
No, you don't, in other forms of, you start getting into correction systems and third party, that's exactly why one becomes taxable and non-taxable. There's a clear line between owned and third party,
I disagree
That's
with the
fine.
right line.
and that's great. We can move on.
Luke, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't think I do.
Chris? Joe?
Are you going to get us a map of this? With
I can
the-
give you a map all day long, I have no problem with that. I'm happy to send one. I have one back in the office, I can send you
It's
one.
got
That
every
helps you.
disposal.
Yes, sir.
And
And it's got
the
the
amount of
producing
pipe
wells that go to each
and
one.
the charges that the operator charges for disposal going down that pipeline, and then
It would
any
just be an internal
non-operator,
obligation, so-
whether or not that passes through the non-operator.
Yeah, we don't have any non-op, this is all Sandridge operated disposal.
No. Non-operated, non-owner of the operations, but one who is paying the bill in a particular section.
No.
The non-operator portion
This is
of
at
the
an
well.
operator level, we're not gonna do it at that level. This is an operator level, that's what this is for. All of the tax, if you look at all the tax cases, or all
So
the citations in here, it's operator. It doesn't say
you
working
are
controls.
aware that an operator can own 20% of a well and somebody else, non-operators own 80%.
Mhm.
How's that treated? Everybody goes under the operator?
You know what, when we run it, I'm as an operator, right, that's what it speaks down to. I'm not gonna go down, because this is exactly why. Because when you get below the operator level, we have, what about this case, what about this case, what about this special case? That's why you keep it at the operator level. They're the one that runs it. The operator is the one responsible for reporting. You're not, the operator is. So therefore, they pass down the taxes just like they pass down the revenue. But it stops at the operator level. You don't have any filing requirements, do you?
I'm concerned about the non-operator being charged and not being a part of the profit-making component of the pipeline and the saltwater. That's what I'm
There's
concerned
not,
about.
at least in Sand Ridge's case, it's not a separate legal entity. And the only profit made is the ability to decrease the cost to dispose of water. And that is given to everyone that participates in that well. Because instead of your economics, your expense being 5 times what it would be without the disposal system, it's a fifth. And that goes out to everyone because everyone gets billed for expenses. You'd be getting billed 50 cents a barrel for water to be disposed. You're getting billed that, you're getting jibbed that every month for however many, if you were paying somebody else to do it. Because Sand Ridge is doing it and built it out, you're only getting billed 6 cents a barrel. That's your expense. Your expense is now decreased by almost a tenfold on disposal. Well,
So Sand Ridge is charging 6 cents per barrel?
I don't know, I'm throwing a number out there. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head, I'm sorry.
I was just.
But it is significantly less than third party. I think you've seen those before. What'd you say, 56 cents, something around that?
Right, it's around 50 cents.
It's significantly less for operated wells.
What about, that's for the disposal fee, what about for the transportation fee to transport it from one lease to the other through the pipeline? Is that separate?
I don't even know that exists. I don't think there's a transportation fee. I may be wrong, but I don't remember seeing that.
How would Sand Ridge recoup their capital investment in that if they're not going to charge?
Through the rate, through the disposal rate. Just like recovering your cost for trucking it. I mean, it may be $2 a barrel to truck it. That is part of doing business. You're recovering your capital cost. But at the same time, you're benefiting as an interest owner, and not you specifically, I'm talking about everyone. It's benefiting as an interest owner.
Well, you share, again, you share in those expenses. This is just one
Okay,
set.
let me kind of summarize what I'm getting out of your conversation here. The working interest people in a particular section do not pay for the pipeline and the disposal. They don't pay for that.
The capital cost to put that in. That's correct.
The capital cost goes to the people who laid the pipeline, got the easements across the other sections, and drilled the disposal. Now, if they don't pay, if the non-operator does not pay a portion, but yet at the same time he's paying 56 cents for disposal, those people who built the pipeline and did the disposal well and bought the easements to go across everybody's property to get to the disposal, those people have to make a profit, don't they?
Not when you're the operator. You're doing that at break even.
That's why a lot of the operators go bankrupt.
That's probably very accurate.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the truth of it
I've got
is,
something right here on my hand to Jeff and see if you recognize that from last year, Jeff.
Okay, so was Woods then? Only the hand?
So
Wood is
what,
okay.
only the hand
I
and
knew
Woody
they
or
were
what
number.
are commercial? So there are two here. that
No,
are
it says are
commercial.
not, there, it says only the hand and Woody, yeah, it says our commercial, basically meaning those are the two that took in the water in 17. That makes sense, or so it was in 16, yeah. So,
So it was,
So it's a couple
it
years.
wasn't somewhere else.
no,
It
I thought
was
it was
last
grand.
year, that's last year.
Right, so that would have been 16. Right, so last year's report, yeah, I'm just smoking that, but yeah. So I knew it was either grant or Woods.
What's the offense? I didn't catch that.
Well, he said that none of these are commercial, right there from his own signature, being acquainted with the books and records.
Well, that's
says
just
being
like I said, I
official.
didn't remember for sure if it was grant or Woods, I thought it was grant. So that
Well,
was
he's
there.
pretty adamant. it's green.
Okay, Gary, here I am saying it's not okay.
Okay. Well, I just thought I needed to give you something.
Oh, you don't, you just like to keep me on down, so it's okay.
So from if these are all integrated, tied to one, how can it be, of course, I guess you said they're not tied to one, they're individual.
there are large sections tied together. There are breaks in that system because does it make sense to run pipe 20 miles? No.
And we can show
So-
you.
Across an open field, an area that has no
It says
wells.
they don't
But there
do
are
that.
large areas
16
that
was
are
last year they
interconnected.
did that though.
Yeah.
But, okay, that's fine, so that,
So in this case, this is what I'm talking about. Thank you for bringing this up, because In that case, those two saltwater wells, those two took on commercial water that year. Perfect, it's just like this case.
No, it's
Those
not
would
just
be the
like that
ones,
case. I'm
those would be
clear
the
with that.
ones that would be taxable.
It is not just like that case,
Why is that?
because those other leases was operated, the Douglas and the Allen both. You made that
Those are the only
statement.
5 leases on those 2 leases? Are the only 5 wells on those 2 leases?
What, the Douglas and Allen
Yeah.
that you talk about?
Well-
No, there was only 3 wells.
Right. They're
I did a
all-
lot of research, since your statement in Grant County saying that these weren't the same operators, I
Right.
went and researched it.
Right,
They
because it's
were.
not clear there.
This
Yeah.
is the same operator.
Okay, well,
there's
then
the list of
I'll do
wells.
some research on that too. 'cause it
But the
wasn't clear
original
either way.
position was that because it crossed lease lines, it's commercial. But the ruling was, it is not commercial simply by crossing lease lines, it must also accept third party.
Right.
That's
That's
when
not the
you,
ruling in that.
at the
that
very
case.
end, that is what they are saying.
Point that out to me here, Bruce. Is that on the
Page
page?
7 and 8, okay?
Okay.
The trial court found the difference between disposal of water produced by one's own lease and the commercial disposal for compensation of salt water generated by another lease.
Another
The
lease.
and
And what?
commercial disposal for compensation.
They were getting compensation from the other lease, just like you guys are.
See, this is where I'm talking about.
Well, okay, so then it becomes a legal dispute over what
Right.
is third party.
So we're gonna kick it over to the courts and
Yeah.
let Luke take
Yep.
care of
It's
it.
not a misspeak on here, when you talk about accepting commercial.
I'm just saying that he said it was clear,
compensation.
it's not clear,
Well,
it says by another lease.
I think it's interpreted as clear. very often.
And I think if you look, the operator was the same, just like in this case. Sandridge is the operator.
But I believe this,
Definitely looking at that one.
Okay, great.
Anything else?
That's enough. Thanks.
Interesting meeting.
That's what I put it on now.
Well, gentlemen, I'll tell you what, I've got a problem with you calling these operators of a well, and you got non-operators behind that. The operator may only own 20% or less. He's making the money off of, as you say, doing the pipeline and the disposal, and the non-operator is not charged any of that, but yet you gotta be making that profit to pay for your capital investment. When you do that, my assumption is it becomes a profit-making center and is subject to being taxed.
So that's every oil and gas company, so I'm really confused as to why they have non-commercial and commercial, and that's every oil and gas company.
The reason you have non-commercial is because it's in the same section, it's a non-commercial.
Well, then you wouldn't need it zoned if it's in that, then they're all the same.
No, it's got to be zoned non-commercial. Originally, I believe that these were filed as commercials.
Absolutely they were. And then they went
And
non-commercial
then
in
you went and
14.
changed them to
Right,
non-commercial,
so what's the point?
thinking that you could get out of it for not being, for being a non-commercial.
Again, that leads me back to my original question. What's the point of having commercial and non-commercial if they're all the same?
Take that up with the Corporation Commission.
I appreciate that one.
And I guess, I go back, I'd like to point out something here too on the, go to my exhibit, page 3. On the bottom right-hand side, the top left, it says maps. Enclose a detailed map noting the location of the taxable assets. This is especially important in the case of taxable pipeline systems for correct assessments. So you're required under the 901P to give us those pipeline maps and stuff. And then Luke, I would just make a note that if it goes on for discovery, that we should get a map like Chris wants of these systems and the wells themselves. But they're required to do that, and you didn't do that in this case.
Okay, I would make sure that all taxpayers are doing that too before you single us
If you'll
out.
certainly give us that list, we'll certainly look into it.
No, I want to make sure every taxpayer that has oil and gas leases is providing you that. If you list that, you're making an
I
exception.
can't disclose on
Again,
what
okay.
companies do and don't on their renditions, just like it's confidential.
Mhm.
Is there any other documents that you have that would benefit us in our decision-making process, or anything that Mr. Wisdom had asked of y'all that we need? 'Cause I don't see us making a decision right here
Sure.
today.
We can, if you want a map, we'll have to provide a map that's easy enough to get. It's not a problem at all. Again,
I think so.
okay, that's fine.
And how about at the expense of the pipeline disposal and how it was prorated out to the owners or whatever?
I'll definitely discuss that with my client.
Well, I think having a map of your wells, your, you know, that's important for us to be able to go back and check you out. We don't have that, we're shooting in the dark here.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, if you give us a timeline when you can provide that, we can decide on a follow-up date.
Yep.
Okay, we can email it or, I mean, I just need it, email to you.
No, email the assessor, copy me, and we can forward it to, or
Yeah,
the
I'll
board.
make sure we keep.
Shelley's,
Okay.
get Shelley, she's the board secretary, and then she can run it and provide it.
Okay, I have your email address.
Yes.
Okay.
But I would certainly like a copy as well.
Yeah, I'll email that to Shelley.
So do we want to resume third Wednesday of next month, or do you want to set this in a couple weeks? Or we're flexible, we want
Okay.
to work with you.
All right.
This isn't an adversarial relationship.
No.
I don't have enough information. I want to see more, read more, understand more.
That's fine. Yeah, we can, you want to wait on these other two, and that way we can see if we need to follow up anything else and set a date. That way I'll have a better idea of how much time we would need. Sure. Thanks. Sure.
Is all of your protests due to the saltwater disposal?
No, we have two different ones.
Are you handling the other two on
Yes,
this
sir.
list? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, I guess we can
I would
move
we
to,
postpone the decision-making until we have the information we requested.
Second.
is this information, is this information we're going to need for the other two that you have?
No.
No? So we can move from, do I need a motion to move from exploration to midstream? No? Okay. So we'll table that one.
All right, so this next case this is Sandridge Midstream. It's basically just another entity of Sandridge that does a lot of the power portion, compressors, generators, things of that nature. They're not a true midstream company, but a lot of this has to deal with assets that have been removed and are no longer there. And, you know, we go by the best information that we have at the time, and Nathan can attest to it as well. You know, Sandridge went through bankruptcy in 2016. So from there, we got a separate asset listing, revalued, all that good stuff. So we found out, though, what happened in 2016 is Sandridge had sold probably 95% of their compressors, all but a few of the screw conveyor compressors. And we don't have an itemized listing of all the compressors that were being appraised or assessed at that year. Jerry had that list, so we were able to look through those this year and get most of those knocked off. At least we rented it that way. And then, I believe so anyways, I'll have to look, I don't want to misspeak by any means. slashed here, but generators were sold in early 2018 as well. So in 2017, they were pretty much, most of them were either scrapped or moved to the Woods discounting location in a yard, and then they were being, say, prepped, but they were sold in early 2018 to, and both of these are kind of like, let's say, a sale leaseback, but they were sold to a compression company and a company that has generators. And so instead of just having them sit there, we use them as needed. So we will rent from a different company. So that company should be required to render those assets. I don't know if they are or not, but so with that said, we did this in I don't know if it was Grant or Garfield, but we removed all the compressors, and then to account for the generators for this year, since they were sold in early 18 and basically scrapped, we just put a 50% value on them, and then for 18 they'll be removed off the tax roll, and 19 will be removed off the tax roll altogether. So that's what I've done. If you look at, it'll say page 2, it's really the third page on there, but just to keep it easy, we'll say page 2. We went through Jerry's fixed asset listing. Again, it's our assets, but we just went through it and we put everything on based off of what we had, I believe, done in Garfield County. So if we had 2 compressors that were on site. Those are valued there under the Alva School District. But really, it was the generators that we put at 50%, and then we removed all other compressors that were sold in 2016. And so that's what got us to our total value of $4,872,525. And I made some of the notes on Jerry's evaluation form for task here. And just again, we just had a summary page of what we did there. Again, generators 50%, kept the power lines as is, removed all the compressors but the 2. And I don't know if you had it in this, I just put the last page here too. Again, I don't remember what kind that was, Jerry. Garfield or what, but anyways, it's just, I put just that page.
That was Grant, yeah.
It's a grant, okay.
That was a
Thanks for
new
that.
allocation of the power lines.
Okay. So I just put that page in there too, just to show that we agreed on that 50% on the generators. So really, we're trying to get this thing cleaned up. It's difficult. Sandridge is, and Nathan can speak to as well, it's overhauling everything. So, they've sold off a lot of property. They're trying to make themselves profitable. Well, they're profitable is just, after bankruptcy, making sure that they're just not overextending themselves. They're looking at new opportunities in other states as well. They've gotten some partnership agreements and things that will be public soon too. So they are going to continue to grow, which is good news. But for now, we're just trying to get the asset listing cleaned up so we can move forward, especially with the 19 file. That's all.
So these properties were not on the Sand Ridge Road in 2017?
Yes, they've been on the roll for,
No, had they been disposed of in 2017?
the compressors, well, yeah, it would be 2017. So the compressors were, and the generators were like February, March of 18. So the compressors were done out in 16. Yeah, we just, again, we didn't know that at the time.
So this is basically, you're talking about correction of what was there, and who owned it.
Right, just getting the taxes list corrected so we can move forward and file it correctly going forward. Nathan, you can speak to that. There's nobody that's.
I'm just saying, I'm sure you saw, there were massive layoffs twice in 2016, large reductions to groups, and that was just one of those things that bringing Merit in, that fixed asset group just didn't have that information properly designated as disposed for the compressors. So they were on the 17 rendition because our internally Sandridge's records just didn't reflect the disposal. So that's what he's saying. It's simply just trying to correct it to what's really on the books at this point.
Your question, I guess, Chris, was these compressors in 2017, the ones that are on this list for 18 and 17? And the answer is yes. Here's the list from 2016, from the rendition that was, there's another copy that was rolled over to 2017. So these are the same compressors. There's no unit ID numbers on any of this information you see here, only lease. And then we have portable compressors that was on there as well. He's made the note right here, says compressors were sold in 2016. Who were they sold to in 2016?
Let's see. Heartland Compression Services.
Okay, do you have the purchase and sales agreement handy for that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to let you see it. I'm not gonna submit it though.
Okay. On your generators, you said you sold the generators that in Woods, or in Grant County, Garfield counties, you said all the generators moved back to Woods County.
We're scrapped here, yeah.
So they weren't scrapped, they were sold in 2018.
Yeah, 18, right.
Okay, so who did they sell the generators to?
Yeah, I can list that too. Do you want the name or?
We need a copy of that, because here's the thing, and then you said they're still out there and we're renting them back.
Well, if we need services, we will rent it. Yeah, well, it's not something we keep on site.
So, but on 1/118, Sandridge Midstream owned them, right?
The generators, yes.
And the compressors that were sold in 2016 to Heartland, are those leased back from them as well?
No. They are not leased back. Heartland provides a compression service. It's a technical, you may look it up anywhere you want. There is compression rentals by contract, and there are compression services by contract.
Baseline energy services for generators.
Baseline energy services?
Yes. Not, yeah, I mean,
Well,
I'll redact some of this and I'll happy to provide it to
Well,
you.
we don't, why do you need to redact it?
Because I don't want a lot of this stuff getting used.
It's all
against me in other
confidential, we
counties.
can't use it in other counties.
I know, Jared, I know.
I'll leave that up to the books if you guys.
Yeah, I'm happy to submit a copy.
And I want to get back to this other part. So there's compressors out there in the field that Heartland is just charging a maintenance agreement on?
They charge a service fee.
A service fee. Does that include for the unit itself?
No, it's a service fee. So, I mean, think of any service you have. Any service that
Does it include providing the compressor?
it provides the compression service. That you read the contract. I'm telling you what the contract says. We provide compression services for the benefit of Sandridge Energy.
We
Drilling,
provide?
Heartland.
Okay.
Okay, so drilling services. You're not renting the rig, you're paying a service fee for someone to come out. That rig's on your location, but it's the service provider's equipment. They're providing the service.
So the service provider should pay the tax.
Well,
Absolutely.
actually, but what that's fine, so that's correct. But under the 901, you're required to give us if any equipment is being leased.
It's not being leased.
Yeah, it's services.
It's not
I'm telling you what the contract says and what the Oklahoma Tax Commission, the position they've taken for other tax tax positions. There is a difference between a rental and a service. Widely recognized across compression industry.
Well,
If you have lights set up when you're drilling, I'm not reporting that's a service.
we should have assessment from Heartland, I suppose, and we should have an assessment from Baseline Energy Services. So that's two of them, but let's get back to this point that this was April 11th of 2018. On 1/1 of 2018, it still belonged to Sandridge, did they not?
Yeah.
Okay, so then these are still responsible, the values that we still have on there are still going to be the responsibility of Sandridge.
Yeah, no, we had just talked about, again, it's kind of the same thing, we knew that.
So
they were
next
getting scrapped,
year-
So that's why we put it
next
at
year
50%,
we-
you saw that on the back page, we had done that in other counties, I just assumed he was gonna honor it in this county too.
So
My fault for
1.6.
assuming.
here's a list of the units. So you have 65 generators then? So if you look on,
6 million. Make sure he's throwing that out there.
if you look on page 5 of my exhibits, we only have 25 units that was reported at that time, and we reported the units at $500 a piece, and this adds up to $24,615 a piece. I guess with this information, I would like to go back and revise the values of the generators back on 1/1 if I can read through this other stuff. If we're going to have another meeting, I'd like to come up with a different value, work with Jeff, and try to
That'd be great.
work the values out on these. As far as the compressors go, all of the compressors that we have right here, we're going to need a list on the compressors. The problem that we have, okay, so here's the baseline energy services. That's what you said. But this is for compressors. Was there a different one then for the, oh, I guess this is the generators, and this was June 6th, so this is something different?
Right, one's compression, one's generators.
All right, so what we have on the compressors, we got booster compressors out there from Heartland. We're gonna need a list of all of your service agreements that you have for every single compressor that you have out there for Heartland.
Why would you need a service agreement?
Because we don't believe the service agreement is still, we believe it's gonna be a taxable compressor, so we're gonna disallow your service agreement. But you're not, it's not interesting to you because it's gonna belong to Heartland. You have 65 compressors that were sold out here. A lot of them still remain, and I think page 3 of this, the active units are to remain in place unless released by Sandridge Production. Heartland is welcome to utilize the idle manner. So these other active leases stayed out there, and you're paying a rental fee or a service agreement for
Contracted
money.
service agreement.
What we need is, because we used last year's, Jeff, we need a list of all of the Heartland compressors, service agreements and other lease along with the list, and then we can revise your values as of January 1st for those as well. You don't represent represent Heartland or Baseline, either one? No. Okay. So if you'll get us that, I can clear up part of this Sandridge midstream. Let's see if there's something else. Well, we got electrical power lines and everything else. Okay, the power lines are fine. So, yeah, I would just, if we're gonna delay this other one, now that I got this information, if you'll supply me that, I'll be more than happy to make those corrections, and we'll send Heartland and Baseline a tax bill for these others.
So it just amounts to who owns the property, is it still on the location during the taxable year that we're looking at?
1/118,
One way or the other?
Yeah, so that's what I need from them, and then we'll clear that up, and you're good with the power lines, and then this one will go away. So if you could get that to me in the next week or something, or however long we're gonna have, I'm just gonna need some time to go through there, and what I'll do is I'll send the guys back out to
Yeah,
check.
it's gonna take us some time. We have one person that's been there long enough that knows where anything is, so that's,
Yeah.
it always takes us a while.
I'm gonna say the sooner the better, but take all the time you need.
No, I agree.
You let us know.
Well, yeah, so, and that'll take care of that, and the other, okay.
So no
Are you
action
good
on-
with that, Renee?
No, this is.
No,
but it's a change from us.
So then no action on that one, correct? Is that how we need to handle that one?
Well, it'll have to come,
Table.
yeah, it'll come back, and then what we'll do is, we come to an agreement, he can send a withdrawal prior to that date of the next one. That sound good to you, Jerry?
Sounds great, Jerry.
Okay, so we'll just table it also.
Do we want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya now?
Let's wait till after. After we're done with negotiating that, I have a feeling that's gonna drag out too, so.
This is
Gotta
gonna
run the
wreck.
levity.
You mentioned the power lines here. Who are the owners of the power lines?
We own
All
the
kind of-
portion of it, yeah.
The Sand Ridge people?
We own the portion of it anyways. We don't, that's why, we had all these generators and compressors just sitting around, they're not being used anymore, and that's why we need to get out of the business of owning that type of equipment.
I'm gonna have to eat the donut here if this continues.
Ben?
That was relatively quick. And painless.
I think next time I'm gonna bring everybody down there some coffee before we start.
We want to take a break for a minute before we get started with the settlement, and drink of water or something?
What, we have any coffee made anywhere?
I think there's some in the commissioner's office.
I guess that's a particular question that I haven't asked. I'm just trying to get a specific question.
There's napkins there somewhere, guys. Okay.
It's
That's
like,
plans.
she can smell the produce here.
Chris and I got the
It's making my
twist.
teeth hurt looking at it. It really is.
Donuts at each end?
Those are plain,
Okay, good.
These
So
are-
I'm on plan.
other kind of,
Why are they gonna have the same deal with BCE? I was a little bit of a surprise, obviously.
This is gonna be different from
I
these.
haven't had
This
some
gonna be
of that
the-
since last time.
Exemption issue.
Yeah.
Oh. Hey, these things stay on during breaks?
Probably.
Yeah.
Are you okay with the third meeting?
They call that a hot mic.
That's right.
well,
That was the reason for the question.
Good observation.
Huh?
Did you watch the Trump deal or something?
Which one?
When you had a hot mic?
Oh, right. They all have those hot mic moments, man. At some point in time.
necessarily between sides, but other companies have done that before. And we don't get it till the day before and we don't have time to get it.
Okay. It's gonna be a-
They're only
Hey,
out
Jerry,
there,
the
but
other is
whatever.
Drew? Is he the one you were telling me about? Okay.
He's the one that signed the document.
Seems like you and Jeff get along pretty well.
Okay, so my question was, if those are owned by those other companies didn't assess.
We're gonna send them with a 20% penalty,
Okay,
but we need the list from them. We need the lease agreements and the list from them. If they don't want to, for us to get
provided
this
that they
thing.
can take.
Yeah, they shouldn't bother. That's what we need.
Jerry, I appreciate how prepared you are, truly. You make it easier for me to understand it. Chris has got it, I don't. You make it easier.
Well, when me and Chris started this, we both had more hair.
That's right.
Matter of fact,
That's a bad sign.
You gotta come into it already like that, so. No, I mean, I still remember
Were
one
you
time
on the
I-
board in the NGE days?
Yeah,
Okay.
I had a little hat one day, had a bunch of fuzzy hair, and he tricked me on putting the hat on, the newspaper lady had me on the front page.
Monica up to nowadays, speaking of MD days?
She, Colorado Springs, I talked to her yesterday.
She's still up there? I knew she came by the office before she moved up there.
Yeah.
Did they move up there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
built a
Okay.
house, yeah.
That's what I thought.
That's slow.
Had a picture of Pikes Peak. She can see Pikes Peak from her house.
That's awesome.
How's the quail population in Clinton, Oklahoma?
Not good,
I bet it's not good anywhere.
not good at
What
all.
was it, worms or something they got them or
Who
something?
the hell knows? No one can tell you.
Yeah.
What about Alva? You guys got any?
Well, not like we used to, but we've got some.
I've heard that it's a little bit better up, further north and even in the Panhandle, I think they have some
Yeah.
further on. But no, shoot. We've got, we see some, but not very many. Not as many as we hoped.
I think the problem is the hawks are pretty good hunters.
True. Bobcats,
Yeah.
coyotes, whatever. Now we went, last opening day, found a covey.
Hey,
A covey.
the dogs are not getting much work out there,
Yeah,
then, huh?
exactly.
We saw a nice big fat pheasant on the way
Oh.
up here. I mean, we almost, it flew right in front of us.
You could have had supper tonight.
I know, I was like, if you did it, I'm stopping, I'm grabbing it.
Where'd you guys come in from? More
35 across.
Yeah, we were
So
in
you
Tulsa.
all Oklahoma City?
Tulsa.
Well, we were in Tulsa last night, but yeah, we're all,
Okay.
it's a little bit further drive than Tulsa.
So, they didn't make you drive or move down to Gainesville and like they made Darren?
No, they didn't make me move down to Gainesville. I was able to stay local. They wanted me to. Convince them otherwise.
So is you guys office El Reno or Yukon or where?
We're in Bricktown right now.
On Bricktown, is it a new office or?
I mean,
Yeah,
for the firm, yeah,
Yeah.
it's about 2 years old now. We're gonna be moving up, kind of that Coral Springs area, yeah, about another year. We're kind of outgrowing our space.
Hey, before we move to the BCE, I know I said as soon as possible, take as much time as you need, but to allow us, is there gonna be any problem getting this knocked out before the end of the year?
No, I mean,
Okay.
try to look at a calendar day, might as well do that.
Okay,
right?
yeah. So I was thinking, come back here the third Wednesday of December, and we'll have,
Okay.
and when will you be able to have that information to Jerry?
I'm gonna shoot for the end of the month. That's my goal.
Does that work with you, Jerry?
Whenever he, I mean, as soon as he gets it, I mean, I'll need it,
Well, I want to give both of
well,
y'all
that,
time.
but I think probably you more so for the map, if Chris wants to drive around and look at the wells and stuff, himself or whatever, what I'll do is I'll bring my crews up here, so I'd like to have, you got the map and stuff kind of quick, if we get that map stuff by the end of the week or something like that. Now, the lease, on the compressor stuff, the lease agreements and the list of stuff like that from what's the name of it, Heartland and the other, I mean, the list of that stuff, I'll need to have those, in, it's kind of the same thing, so.
Yeah, that one's gonna take a little bit longer. The
Okay,
map we
if
have.
we get the map, we can get started on that one, because I think that's the big one, and this other stuff will filter out once you get that other information for us, so I think it's.
So maps first in the week,
Yeah, and then work on.
not trying to pin you
No,
down.
I mean, I have it, it's just getting back there
Yeah.
and doing it.
Okay. So, and you said the third, what, Wednesday?
Third Wednesday?
The 19th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Don't forget if we have to come up, don't forget my Christmas present.
Cold.
Oh, bring all of us.
Yeah, y'all got donuts this time.
Oh, that's our
They don't normally do donuts.
I was feeling generous.
Yeah.
Be a whiskey of some sort.
I was thinking I needed that this afternoon.
Yeah.
Then just do like 10 o'clock, the same time on that,
I'm fine with that.
extra time.
Yeah, that's better.
We'll put it in now.
And then that way we can have our exercise.
Here's some cookies.
That's perfect. 10
Yes,
o'clock
sir.
on the 19th.
Mr. Chambliss.
Okay.
Okay, sir,
Ready?
please.
Thanks. All right. So these are gas lift compressors that were recently purchased from Mock Resources. It's called BC Mock, but I'll just say Mock for short. Effective contract date of January 1, 2018. And these are, I'll just kind of read through here the summary advice on page 2. You can see just on my highlight points. Compressors and associated assets, that these are used for gas lift, and for OAC 710-1082, the same one for saltwater disposal, it's the same sort of listing there. The gas lift compressors and any other related equipment associated with production of oil and gas is exempt from ad valorem tax. The assets were originally owned by Midcon, which was an entity of Chesapeake, but that was their leasing entity. So being that they weren't the operator, Midcon was taxed on these assets, so they leased the compressors to Chesapeake, the operator. So what changes this now is now Mock has come in and purchased both the Chesapeake wells as well as Midcon compressors. So they are the operator that owns the compressors. So we'll just flip over to page 3 here. Determination the property is exempt from ad valorem taxes under the terms of 68 and the payment and fee of lieu of gross production tax. And this is wellhead equipment, including compression equipment that is used for injection purposes, enhanced oil and gas recovery. Compression equipment actually used in the process of bringing oil and gas or both to the surface. Of course, that flows the flow lines, the lease meters, all the equipment that goes with the production. So now that these compressors are owned by the operator, they become exempt. I don't like the way this law is, but that's for whatever reason, I guess because of the leasing component, the lease income when you're on a different entity. But now when they're under the ownership group, it's all collected under the gross production tax. So, do you want to explain kind of walk through the gas lift piece there? I mean, maybe high level.
Sure, yeah.
Sorry, we're going to move on here to the little hand diagram. This is drawn out by their engineer. We just wanted to show that this is actually gas lift compressors.
So the very top, the GL, the box, that is the gas lift. If you'll see, that's actually...
And look at it like this, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, okay.
So let me step back. From the production tubing, the product flows out, free water knockout, vertical separator, heater treater. You'll go through various processes there, go to the oil tanks, the water tanks. Water will go to the disposal pipeline. You go through a combustor for, I believe that is to burn off any excess gas that's in the oil flow. But the vertical separator is where you get your gas product. And it'll flow out at the close second line up from the top and typically flow to the sales meter with a small portion going back up to the very top and going to the gas lift compressor. And then the gas lift compressor goes back, it pushes it down into the hole to recover additional product. Very high level.
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
And then the next page there too is just a quick little summary of what is gas lift. And then we have a list of all the compressors that were part of this divestiture/acquisition. And really to us, it's just a shifting of assets from a leasing entity to now the operator, and therefore making the assets not taxable. I don't know if you have anything
Yeah, like Jeff said, Midcon was a separate entity from Chesapeake in which Chesapeake rented those compressors. So therefore, Midcon, since they weren't a part of the operation, had to list out those compressors for taxation.
And that was for profit. That said that was for profit, right? For profit. I mean, that was the point of it, right? Was for
restriction for gross production because you can take the marketing deduction on it.
You guys have any questions, you want me to go right into it, or?
Go ahead. Do you
You
have any-
digested everything yet? I got a few things here. So, did you bring the purchase and sale agreement?
I can give it to you, I will. I do have the closing statement, that also.
Your gas lift, gas here does not go through the meter, right?
No,
Okay, it's not
No.
through the sales meter.
no.
It's just, I'm not giving prices there, and you can see them underneath. It's just so to show you the effect that they have top, but I can get you that.
We need a copy of the purchase.
So first, okay, I'll get you the one.
Look at your email, you said you was gonna bring it to the forum.
I do have it, I need you to,
You got it with you?
I do have it with you, I'll let you look at it, I just can't release it, man.
Well, how am I gonna digest it without? Do you have all three, there's three different purchase and sales agreements, correct?
I'm not sure on that. What do you mean by that?
Well, let's just go into this. Go to my page, page 2. Page 2 of my exhibits. It's highlighted. Additionally, the company signed 3 separate sales agreements in 2007 fourth quarter for properties Mid-Con operating the aggregate of $500 million.
Okay, so that'd be the different locations.
So there's not, it's both, it's alfalfa and woods.
Alfalfa Woods and Wagner, I think there was a.
Well, there's a BC Bach, but it's a different
Okay.
entity.
Yes, sir.
I'll let you look at this too,
I don't, okay,
I
that's
just
a
have
little
one
vague,
purchase.
and I want to say that was actually completely 3 different transactions, and the BCE mock piece is one of those, or 2, but not all 3. I mean, I'm going off of my memory from when
We'll
this
get there
came
in a
out.
second. Flip over to page 4 of my exhibits. It's got 3 different ones. It's got Chesapeake Land Development Company, Chesapeake Exploration, and Mid-Con Compression. So that's the 3 separate ones right here. This deed is made, it was done January 29th, 2018, but it became effective January 1 of 18, so that's what I asked about. The only problem that I have with January 18 is going down, this effective time was 7 a.m. January 1 started at 12:01, so really, technically, January 1, the initial, it was still owned by Mid-Con Compression and Chesapeake. Thought you'd get a little laugh out of it. I was being facetious on that one, but I wasn't meaning there, but I wanted to, the master point is 7 hours, you guys owned this. So, anyway, so this is the rendition, and I guess this is the list of compressors, and they alluded to it, but let me go over here. The problem, what about the inventory value? You said all of the stuff presented, we had inventory value 1.7 and 2.5.
Yeah, to me, there's a question of too, what's included in this overall production equipment. So, I mean, I'm just, again, going back to that statute. So that's something we can discuss, I'm happy to talk about, but based on that list, it just said that all the equipment associated with the gross production becomes exempt, so.
Well, so you're saying everything's 0 on the value. What I'm saying is we got inventory value 1.790 million
Okay.
for one.
You may know more about
One
that.
issue.
I really don't know.
That's in the, if you go to page, because Drew, you signed this rendition, so page 13.
Drew Harold signed this one.
Oh, did he? I thought it was you. Oh,
Okay.
okay. So this is at the Winoka, or let's see, Alva, I guess yards, job force 47. So that's 1.79 million of equipment.
Okay.
It's not on a lease, it's not part of production.
Sure.
Okay. And then let's go to, we got a forklift, and on page 16, we got a forklift and some other stuff for like 88,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to the units here in a minute, but another part is we had didn't tab these. Go to page 31. So this is at the Winoka yard. We had $2,507,317 in value of inventory. But, and I'm assuming in that PS&A, they're probably gonna list all that stuff out in that too as well. But that's, you take issue with your zero value on that.
Sure.
Now then, for the, go to page 32. Let's talk about the compressors a second. Everybody gets to page 32. If you go up the right, it's the type of business is gas compressor rental. We both agree to that. I think you've already recognized that that entity is not part of the production and is taxable. The purchase and sales agreement was dated 1/29. It wasn't completed until, I think, March 29th or 28th. There's 3 months of rental that went on for these compressors for January 1. So from a standpoint, what do you mean no?
Well, when the effective date's 1, so you have a transition service agreement that goes from January 1 to July, I believe is what Matthew said. I can't remember. Because I know our first gross production filings, I believe, were July, so.
Your first production was July.
Right, because we have TSA.
But what I'm saying is January 1 of this year, all these compressors are still being rented. So that eliminates your zero exemption.
So they didn't own
No.
it January 1?
No, they owned it, but it was still being run as a gas compressor rental business because the closing wasn't done in March. Okay.
Okay.
So, but now here's my next question. How is Sandridge treating the gas, are they going to create their own, or Mock, excuse me, are they going to create their own rental companies and start renting these compressors out themselves?
They have no design to do that. We've
Okay.
discussed this
So-
clearly.
Okay, so then they reverted each one of those compressors that's on that lease back to each well, the working interest owners, so on and so forth.
I don't know, I just know it's under Mock.
All right, that's something to look forward next year. And I would agree, I'll agree with you if or that well owns that compressor and that rental, we're not gonna tax it. But I think for January 1, the circumstances shows that it is, but I think for next year, then I think that you guys got a legitimate argument if it's necessary for production. So my opinion on that right there is to leave the values like they are for this year under the circumstances. Show me that they got a, separate, or it's the same entity or what on another deal, and next year, I believe that the gross production would take that into consideration.
I appreciate that.
And that's a big step for me.
Yeah.
You don't think I would do, you don't think I'd ever do anything like that.
No, that's, yeah, that's.
So,
it's
being a little facetious there again, but I mean, right's right, wrong's wrong. So from that standpoint, I would just ask if you understand our position on that, I would just ask for you to affirm our values for that. I'd still like to have a copy of the purchase sales agreement. Let's talk about it before next year on how that's all going to shake out. And then we'll go out and look at, make sure that none of these, though, as one caveat to that, is not split. Some of them use injection and use it for a compression too, both. And I don't know if they have any of those.
Yeah, look out.
And if they
I don't
do,
think, the nature of where it sits on the pad and in the piping,
yeah.
I don't think there's a way to do that.
Okay.
There's no pipe back down to compress out. It just,
On some of them, they had a control valve that changed it. We just need to make sure that that's,
Yeah.
and if there is, what we do on those cases, because we do have them, we do an allocation based upon how much time was injected versus how much time went to the gathering side.
I mean, I know those exist, but not on these ones. I mean, I get what you're saying. We'll verify that, but
Yeah.
those
And
sit in a
probably-
different spot.
Probably
Those
what we
sit
need to do
closer to
is
the
sit down
sales
with one of
line.
the local production foremen or something, Jeff. I'd like to go out and talk about the leases and visit with them about that before next year, or before the rendering time sometime. Of course, we're almost there.
I know. Yeah, it's not July anymore.
So, in this instance, I would just ask the board to affirm our values now and then with what we had, and that's on pages 71 and 72, and move forward with that. And then coming up this year, understanding that if Mock brought them all under the umbrella and they're not treated as a separate entity, as a gas compressor rental business, because look at it, Chesapeake had a separate company for Midcon just to do this. Mock, BCE could be doing the same thing, so we'll make sure they're not.
Yeah, and we, ever since Mock was formed, they're a startup, and it's,
Tom did that,
Tom
and
did
now
that.
he just
He'll
bought
do
half
more.
of Sandridge's Reposol, or whoever owned the other 50%.
He'll do a few more, this is what he does, and but at the same time, it's, we set up and we went through, we've had meetings to discuss just this issue because of the taxability when it was with Chesapeake because of Mid-Con. So the entire purpose of not creating, or this is the entire purpose of not creating a separate entity.
And it's all in one on something that's like some sort of affidavit or something, what they're doing, so. We'll talk about that when we do the inspection.
But no, I still want
But
to,
on this one, I think the board can go ahead and rule, I mean.
well, I'm still gonna, of course, and argue back to January 1, because that is the accounting date, and that is when we officially took ownership of this. So
But
even though it didn't close, the liability is still on us January 1. And it's accounting and how we treat that, and we have a TSA in place from January 1 to July, like I said. But we are still the rightful owners. If something happened, that's on us.
Well, that's fine, but I'm still gonna say that there's no way to reverse the fact that they were renting these compressors all the way through March until it closed.
I mean, again, that's, we're planning.
That's gonna be in the closing statement and everything else, so, like I said, show us a copy.
Well, you know what, you wanna look
But-
over the next 2
but
weeks,
anyway.
I'll let you have it over the next 2 weeks. I
Yeah.
just gotta get you to sign a piece of paper and
That's
look at
fine.
it. You got it.
Okay.
I'll let you look at it. If your guys are good with everything, and that's your call, sorry, I'm just speaking.
No, you're fine.
But,
But I
I just
still-
want to make,
I'll let you
excuse me,
have it, yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we're asking collectively a lot of information, that it's not delivered to us last minute.
No.
We'll be here the 19th, and maybe minimum 2 weeks before that.
Mhm.
And obviously, the things that Jerry had asked for by the end of this week.
You'll have everything by month end, you'll have a map by the week.
If you wanna wait on that rule, and if there's something in there, read or change my mind, we can wait till that date to do that too. But I don't know what the silver bullet's gonna be in there to see, so.
Well, I just want you to look at it, and then you guys will be able to have, copy too, and be able to see that this is an actual January 1 transaction.
I'm
We are
not-
responsible for all things that happen.
Yeah, well,
The
you need to
renting
see
thing,
that
that's
closing
easy.
statement and all of the actual accounting, the
Right.
purchase price allocation. Gonna need to see all that to see how all that shook out, because there's gonna be income and expenses, backdated back to
Right.
1/1.
Right, absolutely.
So, and then how that was treated, and I guess the question would be, all those units didn't cease the rental agreements of January 1.
Well, again, once you say, hey,
And you
for
said
that day, because that
Back
just
to
doesn't.
July
yeah.
1st, you said was the first gross production deal.
Well,
so-
that's the first time we filed, because everything is typical, everything's covered with the TSA, they don't even have an accounting group at that time, so yeah.
Let me have a copy of that stuff, and if I need something else, I'll follow up with a copy, Shelley, or email it, whatever.
Yeah, no, that sounds good.
Okay.
What my concern is here is who actually owns it. You're talking about service agreements, rental agreements, okay, big deal. Who owns it? Because those people with the service agreement and the rental agreement, if the ownership rests with them, they're gonna charge for the taxable liability to the rental agreement or the service agreement. Just who owns it?
Yeah, I think it's gonna get back that they were still, that's what my point is even though it closed March 29th, they didn't know it was gonna close, they still had 3 months of rental. That's still a rental unit for 3 months, even though it goes back to the ownership on January 1, it wasn't treated differently. Now, next year, I can see that, but I think for this year, I don't think it's applicable. My opinion, but I gotta read the closing statements and the purchase price allocation, and is that the Mid-Con PSA?
This is everything. They weren't
Okay, so
three
this-
separate.
It wasn't 3 separate
And
ones?
that's what I was thinking it was 3
Oh,
separate
just something
transactions for
you should
different assets. They just did all at the same time.
Right.
And
This one
Mob was
says
only one of them.
Chesapeake and the exploration of Mid-Con, so, and the land development, so, yeah.
Yeah,
I read that as 3 is the deal.
contracts, yeah.
So there might have been another one, so,
But yeah, I'll get you a copy, so it's before we can.
okay, all right. And let's see the back of that.
Yeah, it's front and back, so. And that is straight. That should be straight from the rendition.
Okay, so here's the allocation page on the real property interest on the back. Okay, the press is here too. Okay, yeah. You can't just make a copy today over here? Why?
Because I was expressly told that you have to sign the agreement first. I will send it to
Oh,
you.
confidential,
Yes,
okay.
yes, that's all it is, just an NDA. Same if I get, well, I'll send one to the board in general, and then they have no problem releasing it, it's just, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
Want to get in that.
Yeah, well, I can't, it's just like I can't take something from Brent County and bring it over here. Now, you can take anything I sent to Brent County and bring
Yeah,
it
that's
over.
never been the issue. To me, it's just the way we value things shouldn't change, County.
Yeah.
Ever.
Okay, so I guess we're back to
Nothing.
meeting for, yeah, we didn't do nothing. I think we
The
made.
action today was inaction.
I think
You know,
that we
next-
made progress today, that we could have made progress keeping open channels of communication.
No, that's fair. I mean, hey, we're here, you know, in this sense, and I was hoping we could have done this a lot earlier. So that's groundbreaking.
So we're tabling out everything,
Yes, ma'am.
all three of them, very good.
It's 10 to 9 still or so. We may-
Yeah.
10 till
Not
9.
over before it started.
So we'll meet back here on the 19th,
Sounds good.
10 a.m.
I've got my follow-up here, so.
Here, motion to adjourn.
So I move, we adjourn till the time we reconvene to address the table of motion.
Set up for the December 19th again.